Good morning and happy Valentine's Day to everyone who's here and who's watching. It is Wednesday, February 14th at 8 a.m. This is the General Government Committee convening our meeting. Our first order, as always, is to just call to order with roll call. I'm joined by Councilmember Joan Cathy, Councilmember Michael Althauser, Councilmember Leanna Dahlhoff is excused this morning, so it'll be the two of us. We do have quorum, so we can proceed. Our first matter is approval of our minutes from our January 10th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Is it just you and me?
It is just us. So I'll have to rely on you
To so move.
It's so moved, and I'll second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes unanimously. So our next item that we would be doing is selection of a committee chair, but because Councilmember Dahlhoff is not able to be with us this morning, I think we're going to push that to our meeting next month. So we can dispense with that item quickly. And that brings us to our substantive agenda. And the first item is an interlocal agreement between us, Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Tenino, Yelm, Thurston County, and the Thurston Regional Planning Council in support of all of our housing element updates. Brad, I think you're going to help us walk through that this morning.
Yeah, good morning. This is the first of two interlocals that we'll be talking about. In the recommended action for this, the staff is requesting that the General Government Committee put this on the consent calendar for your next City Council meeting on February 20th. This interlocal agreement is for working with Thurston Regional Planning Council to develop a land capacity analysis. Essentially, we know how many housing units we need to accommodate for in the city for the next 20 years. The land capacity analysis will basically tell us if under our current zoning and land use designations, we have sufficient capacity for those units, or if we're going to need to make some changes to accommodate that. This is a great opportunity for us because it's a heavy lift for us to try to do this ourselves. But our portion of the interlocal agreement in terms of the contract is about $8,000, which in my mind is a bargain to get this kind of data and information. I also want to very quickly mention that we're also in the process of working with Olympia, Lacey, and Thurston County for a related item for the housing element update called a displacement study, which is essentially saying if we make changes to our housing element, what are the potential things that could happen to existing residents and populations, and how do we mitigate and deal with that issue? So that should be coming. We'll be talking about that, but I think that's a contract that will probably be under the City Council. The City Council doesn't need to approve.
Great. Joan, do you have any questions or anything?
No.
It's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't have any questions either. I do agree that that's really important data for us to get, and that it's a really economically advantageous way for us to be able to procure that and have informed policy choices about our housing elements. So this is outstanding. So if there are no other questions, our recommended action, if there is a motion, is to place the ILA on the February 2024 City Council consent calendar to authorize the mayor to sign the LA between the cities of Lacey, Olympia, Tenino, Tumwater, Yelm, with Thurston County and with TRPC to support the housing element updates.
I so move.
I will second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Brad. That was a quick one. The next one we have is about our community outreach plan for our 2025 comp plan update. And Erica and Brad, are you guys both going to be helping us walk through that one?
Erica is out of the office on vacation, so I'll be taking the lead on this one. So if everyone can see, what screen can you see? The full screen, I hope.
Yes.
Yes.
What I'd like to do this morning is give you an update of what has happened to date on our community outreach, and then briefly discuss immediate next steps that you'll be seeing as members of the council. We have a number of activities that will be coming up in 2024, and as they are scheduled and as they come online, we'll be giving you updates on that. All of our community outreach is guided by the community engagement plan that we discussed with the council and the general government committee last year. It outlines the process and all of the activities that we're going to be considering. Our objective for this whole process is to make sure that the community and our stakeholders have meaningful opportunities to participate in the update process throughout the update. So not only at the formal adoption process at the end, but all of the steps leading up to that. Our engagement plan outlines our tactics, strategies, and platforms to work with the community and stakeholders throughout the update. And more importantly, our process is going to be very flexible because we recognize with the changing nature of community outreach and the need to take advantage of events and opportunities that may come up. We're not going to be locked into a specific thing that we're going to always have to do. We're going to basically try our best to meet the community where the community is. Very briefly, again, on our periodic update process, step one and throughout is our engage the community process. Step two, we are finishing up gathering and analyzing the data. Step three, we're also in the process of doing is evaluating our current policies. And then in 24 and 25, we'll be revising our policies and review and updating our regulations. So we're really sort of in a transition process right now with what we're doing. Just a quick update of what you can find on our project website. We have been, all of the documents that are related to the update are located on the website. That includes information from all of our meetings, all of the state guidance material that's available, drafts of the elements as they become available will be uploaded there, as well as all of the staff reports and presentations to date that we've given for all of the elements. So each of these boxes here, you click on that and it'll open up menus that show all of the documents. You can select and download anything like related to that. Our first community survey was made available in November. City communication staff sent out 22,000 postcards in addition to our notices on the webpage and through our social media. We had received 800 responses through the end of last month. The survey closes today. So our intent is to report back to you probably at your next meeting, the results of the survey, give you an outline of the responses and so forth, and what we're going to be doing with the data that we were able to collect. We're also holding open houses and community conversations, which is sort of a catch-all for any place we can go and talk to people. We had our first hybrid community open house was on the end of January, and January 31st, excuse me. It was at the fire training room in the evening. It was open for 2 hours. The general agenda looked like our introductions to the process and the staff. We were able to do online polling that people were able in person and also hybrid, were able to respond to using cell phones and so forth. And then we had a short presentation of the process and further polls and surveys, and then we summarized and closed. We also took an hour, more than an hour worth of questions from the community during that process. At the open house, we had about 16 community members who were online. We had about 43 people in person, and we were supported by 7 staff people. For the most, this is the online surveys were data that was collected just to give you an idea of some of the responses. This includes both the online and the written. Some people in the room didn't have access to a phone or preferred to fill out the written form. So this doesn't obviously equal the total number of people who were there, but it gives you an idea of the audience that we had. For the most part, it was people who owned a home in the city. And in my mind, it points out that we have a lot of work to do to get more input from those who rent, because that's a substantial component of the community as well. In terms of work, we got a general sense of where people were. I don't know how good this data was, but I think it's a worthwhile question to ask. In terms of race and ethnicity, I think this again is similar to the question about whether you rent or own. It just points out that we have some more work to do in order to represent the community and get those voices. We're working right now with our communications department about other ways to do that, and hopefully we'll be able to roll some things out here shortly. This was an interesting one for us in terms of how the people heard about the event. Social media and word of mouth was by far the biggest way. In terms of news and other things, it was much lower than obviously it has been in the far past. Some of the questions that were asked by the attendees, this is a summary of some of the concerns that were raised. There were questions regarding how will the update address things like more essential facilities like schools and social services. Questions were asked about when the survey results will be posted. We had some questions regarding economic development in terms of what the city is trying to do to attract specific businesses or identify things that they would like in the community that are lacking. We had a number of folks talking about affordable housing. In terms of some very specific things that, as in one person identified that their son who's 23 would like to move out of the house. How can he do that and where can he do that? There are also people offered to be involved in dealing with those things, which I found was very good. And also we talked a little bit about the housing projections and where the numbers come from and how we're going to be dealing with those. We had some initial questions on density, land use, and zoning designation changes. We had a large number of folks there who wanted to talk about the East Street extension, specifically the final location of where that roadway would be. Our intent is to have a separate meeting and discussion to address that issue. And so we can also move ahead with some other things that we have to deal with there. There was some discussion about redevelopment of older and unused sites, especially the brewery, what strategies that we're going to be including in the comprehensive plan and so forth. More again about steps to address the housing crisis. How do we create walkable neighborhoods and needed sidewalks? We talked a bit about that and how that would fit in. As we do infill development, some of the people at the meeting wanted to make sure that we accommodate the needs for transportation beyond just having cars. And then, of course, there were questions about funding for housing services, essential facilities, and social services as part of this.
Brad, could I ask you, did you pick up at all what stirred up the East Street extension thing again? Kind of all in a little flurry there for a while.
Yeah, well, we've been having discussions with the neighbors about that and trying to explain where we were in the process. And I think the neighbors were concerned that that there wasn't resolution to their questions, because unfortunately for us, there isn't resolution until we actually have funding to do something. Now, right now, we have a line on the map that is there basically to try to get us funding to get us to the next step to get into those discussions. And I think the neighbors had concerns that they wanted to very valid concerns, but they were more related to the ultimate layout and the design of the project once we're farther along in the process. So
they were satisfied with your answers? And
no, I don't think so. That's why we're going to have another meeting, another discussion with them to try to talk through those issues.
Yeah, those folks are a bit stirred up and gonna, I think, be a little nervous till anything happens. So,
But this meeting that we had occurred before the most recent council meeting, correct, Brad?
That's
Where
it.
After, and Joan, just so you're aware, after that meeting ended, I think Lisa was there and I talked to a number of those neighbors about some of the issues that they were concerned with. And one of the things was that there was, I think, an outdated graphic from when we first put this on like the long range plan that projected construction would begin in like 2024 or something, like a very old graphic. And they saw that, and I think we're panicking, or panicking is a bad word, but I think that they were concerned that something was going to happen without, the public outreach that's required by things like SEPA and so on and so forth. And once we sort of understood that that was an outdated graphic, I think that people were more understanding of the current timelines we're on, which is like way, way protracted compared to what that graphic originally was showing.
Thank you for that. I saw one of those people, or one of the people saw me at Safeway, and I'm kind of in their hood, so it's been a while since somebody stopped me in Safeway, so I was surprised. And they were appreciative, but like you say, they're not maybe satisfied, but they feel like they've gotten our attention. That's what I said, so that was good. Thank you. I think there's her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was just I'll just reiterate and add on to what Michael was saying in terms of the conversation after the meeting. There was clarification that the analysis that had been done was purely technical. It was purely an engineering exercise in terms of feasibility, based very much on conceptual corridors, not precise locations. I think that's something that when people see those bands on a map, they assume that those are precise, and it certainly is not. And then the majority of them, the people that I spoke with, who actually were not the people that I've spoken with before. The one gentleman who spoke pretty passionately to begin with is the person that I've talked to most. And I think that we collectively, the city, has talked to the most. But the folks that I spoke to after the meeting were satisfied that, design and engineering and permitting absolutely requires public participation, particularly in terms of the State Environmental Policy Act review. And if there's any federal funding, obviously a commensurate NEPA review. So they were much happier, I think, when they left. They did assure me that they would remain participating in the process, which is awesome. That's why that's what we want them to do. And I would say also, the message that the neighborhood folks that we've spoken to the most received, starting way last April, I think it was, Brad and Mary Heather met with them, was you need to participate in the comprehensive plan update process. And so, they are, which is great. And so the message is getting out. It's important to pay attention to these processes, and we absolutely are going to be as transparent as possible in dealing with any kind of road alignment that could potentially affect our neighborhood. So thank you.
Moving on to the topics that were identified by the members of the audience, they want to learn about more. We have the three categories for affordable housing, climate, environment, and transportation, which is all pretty even. But there was also there's a lot of interest in all of those, so that's a good thing, because we're going to be gearing a lot of our further communication about those particular items. In terms of the housing issues, it was pretty much everything. Affordable housing provisions, how density will be dealt with, and how housing types will be dealt with as part of the code update. In terms of climate, very similar. We discussed what would be happening with the climate element. There were obviously interest in every component of that, so we're actually pretty, again, excited about that part of the issue. And in transportation, we had pretty much, across the board, Obviously, traffic and forecasting, I think that has to do with the East Street plus a number of other issues in the city. That's drawing the most attention. But I think obviously we talked about this, but transportation will be another big issue that will be dealing with as part of this process. In terms of finding out about future conversations, we wanted to find out from people what they thought would be the best way to let them know what was happening. We will probably, what this means basically is there's a lot of different ways we're going to have to send out our messages. We can't rely on one thing. For people like myself or of the older generation, looking at the newspaper number as 0 now is a little bit of very big disappointment, but I'm really not a surprise. In terms of the update phases, where we're at again, we're doing the community engagement, finishing up the data collection and review of existing elements. We're transitioning into phase 2, which is the plan development phase. Wanted to speak a little bit about the things. So we're going to have community open houses and so forth, dealing with specific topics like climate, housing, and transportation. When we're a little farther along, we can present to the community some of the things that we're looking at and offer some choices in some of the things that we're doing. We are going to be doing a number of joint work sessions between the full council and the planning commission on the topics related to housing, climate, and the development code update. And we're also going to be doing, at the moment, we have a couple of tours of the community scheduled. The first one will be dealing with housing at the beginning of April with the city council and the planning commission. We'll be talking with the general government committee and the council a little bit about what that's going to look like and getting your input on how that could go. But I just want to make you aware that that is now on the schedule. I also want to make sure that we talked a little bit about the staff that were at the meeting and the preparation that we had. We had a number of people helping us with this process, especially those in our communications department. They did an outstanding job of, number one, preparing and getting everything ready in terms of what the structure for the open house, having the welcoming table, getting conversations going with people before they came into the room, making them feel welcome and everything. I really want to call them out for their effort there. That was an extremely positive thing, having the ability to engage with people on the individual level before they enter, which can be sometimes intimidating group meeting and so forth, is a positive thing. So we're really looking forward to working with them on that in the future. In terms of ongoing updates of what we're going to be doing, we're going to be updating you primarily as the representatives for the city council and where we are in the update, letting you know where we are in community engagement. We've talked a little bit about how the community will be notified going forward for key meetings and open houses. And then again, we have our periodic update email as well as our website that are available at any time. Did you have any questions for me as part of this process?
Joan, do you have any? Councilmember Kathy, do you have any questions?
I do not. I'm encouraged by people's input. I think it was good. We've been, as Brad well knows, been harping on these kinds of things for a long time, so it's good to get harping on we need to reach out to the community. So I'm pleased.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to rack my brain for when we had open houses when we were last working on the comp plan when I was on the planning commission. And I remember attending a couple of those and it being more sparse than some of the reported attendance we had for this one. So I'm encouraged by that. I wonder also in terms of outreach strategies, this is sort of an old-fashioned one, but there's at the Valley in particular, there's community boards where theirs are pretty actively used by people who go to the Valley. I wonder if we put a flyer up there, if that could also be helpful, knowing clientele. There's a ton of civically active folks there. Particular, our local gadfly, Dave Nicandri, pulls me aside from the treadmill every once in a while to chat a little bit. So I know that if we hung something up there, it might get a little more attention from
I think
folks who
that
are actively minded there.
I like that, Michael, and I think over at the golf course also is a board, and that people stand around and read that. And one of the things I was encouraged about is the climate, and that people are much more engaged in the climate and the environment, and all the things that go with that. Now, that's a big difference, I think, from previous times, and I'm glad that staff was there to engage with them on those things. And I like your idea of putting up a flyer at those two locations down at the valley.
Yeah, I also want to point out, ahead of the open house, our communications staff and Erica were out with flyers to a lot of areas that we hadn't been posting things like that before, a lot of different businesses. More importantly, having conversations with the people there as we're putting the flyers up to sort of talk about what it means, and hopefully getting them, interested and then be able to talk to others about that. So we're definitely going to be relying on that going forward.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, this is an informational item, right, Brad? We don't have any action to take.
Yeah, so at your next meeting, we'll hopefully be able to talk about the survey results that we received.
Yeah.
So you'll get a flavor of what that is, and we'll talk a little bit further about the next activities coming forward.
Great.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, we can move on to our final item on the agenda, the interlocal agreement between us and the Port of Olympia for the Bush Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan for our third amendment.
So this item is one that the city council saw back in last year and approved the mayor for signature. After that happened, the port staff took a look at the agreement again and said, well, maybe we should make some minor changes to it. And they came back with amendments for that. Essentially, it added additional language to talk about when the agreement would potentially expire, and all of that. Basically, give us more time. This is essentially our foundation agreement to agree to work with the port on developing the habitat conservation plan, and it's just something we need to have in place so we can continue to work with them on that. The Port Commission reviewed and approved the amendment at their January 22nd meeting. The ask today is that you recommend that the council add this to the consent calendar for your meeting next week on the 20th for approval.
Is this the one that got quite a bit of conversation from I guess it was a work session or a council meeting? No, okay.
No, this one is, there's other things that are stirring the pot, but this one is a pretty mild.
Should it be then, you think consent's fine?
Yes, it's basically continuing the ongoing relationship we've had with the port to develop the plan since 2016. It's just an extension of that existing working relationship. It doesn't commit us to any outcome. It just makes sure that we continue to work towards something.
Okay. So if somebody wants to pull it, you or Lisa just say, this is not the one stirring the pot, is that it?
Whatever language would be appropriate.
I like it.
Yeah, I think this really is just instead of having to come back to each board every single year to amend it for time, this basically sets a time frame and ties it in part to the adoption of, or the issuance of, the incidental take permit and approval of the HCP, or like a date certain, which is several years out. And yes, council members, anybody can simply send an email or even at the meeting ask for something to be pulled off the consent agenda. It doesn't even require a second. So, yep.
I do have one question, because the language in it says that the city is responsible for most of the administrative paperwork, like applying for the grants and stuff. And that's always been the case, correct? We're just
That's
memorializing it in this document.
Yeah, that's correct. And we've been managing, we're applying for phase 4 grants, but we manage all of the grants and do all that work. So that's fine. That's what we've been doing. And I prefer if we continue to do that.
And there's also the provision that says that once the permit is granted by the feds, that then the agreement lapses within 90 days.
Yes,
And
and that, go ahead, please.
So that's just sort of a standard triggering provision so that we don't have an ongoing agreement that is irrelevant once we actually accomplish the work.
Exactly, but more importantly, there will be a replacement interlocal agreement to handle the situation once we have an approved HCP, because obviously we'll still need to coordinate with the board and need to have a formal relationship in terms of how we're managing that. But yes, the intent is to end the sunset this particular agreement and start the new agreement once we have the permit in place.
And we would still, as a council, have to approve a new agreement. We just
Correct.
wouldn't have to approve sunsetting this one because it would be moot at that point anyway.
That's correct. And the intent would be, we would have a number of things the council would have to approve as part of the agreeing to the permit that's been issued by the federal government. So this would probably be one of the many things that would be part of that package.
Do you have any questions or anything, Joe?
No, mine are answered. Thank you.
Great. Well, I don't either. So I would entertain a motion that we recommend that the council add the amended ILA between the city and the Port of Olympia for the Bush Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan Amendment number 3 to our consent agenda for approval at our February 20, 2024 meeting.
So move.
I will second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion passes unanimously. And I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. So seeing nothing else, I'll wish everyone again a very happy Valentine's Day, and thanks so much for a quick and efficient meeting. See you again on Tuesday.
You have a good day, Michael.
You as well, Councilmember Cat.
Thanks.